Welcome to the Upper 90 College Insider Series, where we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals in the college soccer landscape. In this episode, we are excited to feature Coach Ethan Maguire, an Upper 90 College alumnus from Sydney, Australia. Ethan's impressive playing career at Goldey-Beacom College in Delaware in NCAA Division II saw him lead the team to their first ever NCAA Division II national tournament berth and Central Atlantic Collegiate Conference title. Now, as the assistant men's soccer coach at Goldey-Beacom, Ethan shares his experiences transitioning from player to coach, his coaching philosophy, and insights into the US college soccer system. Join us as we explore Ethan's inspiring journey from Sydney to Delaware and his continued impact on the game. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So it's great to have you on again, brother. Good to see you back home and back in Oz. For those of you that probably don't know too much about Goldey-Beacom, this is one of their assistant coaches, Ethan Maguire. Ethan is one of our Upper 90 alumni who I actually sent over through to Goldey-Beacom and NCAA Division II program. And he had a phenomenal career during his time there. He'll expand on that a little bit more. But, since then he's transitioned into the coaching role over at Goldey, and it's just going to be great to get some insights from a fellow Aussie, so other prospective Aussie student athletes who are thinking about going over to the US get some keen insights about what the system is, what the system isn't, what it can provide you, and everything else kind of in between. But Ethan, love having you on, man, and it's so good to catch up with you again. So let's go back in time. Sydney boy, out in the West.
Yeah.
I know. You know, you're a massive Liverpool fan, but back home, I'm not sure if you're a Wanderers or now a Macarthur FC fan. I'm not sure if you even follow the A-League, but grew out in the West, played a lot of his football out that way. Maybe you can give us a little bit of a rundown as to, where you kind of came up from a footballing perspective. Back here at home in Australia.
Yeah, so first, thanks for having me. As you said, it's great catching up. We've known each other for ages now. It's almost 8 years. 8 years, I think it is. 8 years this year. So it's been awesome. So growing up, so I'm a Sydney FC fan. I've always been a Sydney FC fan, and even when the Wanderers came in, a few boys I know jumped ship, but I always stayed at Sydney FC. And then Macarthur came in, and still Sydney FC. Went out to a game when I first got back a few weeks ago, with a few of my mates, just to watch it a little bit, get to see Douglas Costa in action as well. So that was pretty cool. Growing up playing, so I started out at Macarthur Rams, played a few years at Rams, then from Rams moved over to Marconi, spent a year at Marconi. From Marconi went to Bonnyrigg, and then from Bonnyrigg I went from Bonnyrigg to Parramatta, and then from Para was my last year in Australia. Then I moved from Para over to Goldey, and been at Goldey practically ever since, which was 2017. I went to Goldey, August 2017. I've been there ever since as a player, and as you said, is now an assistant coach. So it's been some journey, some ride. I'm a boy from Campbelltown now, over in Delaware. So it's been awesome.
So obviously, from my perspective, there's kind of a lot to unpack with that. But you kicked off playing in the NPL system here. Obviously, I recruited you and I got you out of the Goldey, but big culture shock when you came over there, probably a very, very different landscape than what you experienced or grew up around here. What was that kind of transition like? And, if you can give some insight to, prospective student athletes, what should they expect when they kind of transition? Yeah. Maybe you want to talk about that initial phase of being recruited, then coming over to Goldey and your kind of first time, like we just talked about it now, kind of all hell's frozen over right now over in Delaware and different parts of the East Coast and otherwise, and the US, given it's coming out for the fall and winter and whatnot. Maybe give you a take on that transition, how that kind of fared for you, and just the challenges. Be open about it, physically and otherwise, and things that you had to adapt to.
Absolutely, yeah. So the recruiting stage when I came with you, it was immediately practically after high school. I was just in the end of high school doing my HSC, getting my ATAR and all that sort of stuff. And to be honest, in a way, I wish I knew about it about a year earlier to be honest, just in terms of the studies and everything and how big studies were, for the college system, because I'd never thought about going into the college system. It was always, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to be playing NPL and I'll be playing first grade and then I'm going to go and sign and play A-League somewhere. But obviously that didn't work out that way. It worked out probably a better way for myself and how I wanted to live my life. But just the recruiting process was unreal. It was very very eye-opening. Mum, my dad and myself always looking at her emails after speaking with you and corresponding with some other coaches, making sure I had good footage, good match footage, full game footage, good highlights, but also good referrals from coaches. I think everything worked out pretty well. And then I was sort of working full-time, part-time just before I went over. So I was always like in between work, always checking my phone. Oh, I've got a team, when's the next meeting? And then it was actually pretty funny. I don't know how well this story will go down, but when I actually signed with Goldie, I was actually at Schoolies. I was at the Schoolies and had my I had the Skype call with the coach. Still here now. Fortunately, we'd spoken a couple of times before that, and this was sort of just the seal of like the offer and everything like that. I was on day 3 of Schoolies. Told all the boys to be quiet and go away, go to a different room. With day 3, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning. So day 3, 5 o'clock in the morning, everyone's had a fun time, and I've had to quickly have a nice shower and make myself look presentable and have a good conversation with what turned out to be my offer to Goldie, and 8 years later I'm still here. So it's funny how it all works out. And then obviously I think we agreed to everything in December and everything, and we had to do all the translation of grades, all that sort of stuff. And then it was April, I think it was, we got the NLI. We signed the NLI, and that's when it really made it official. And that's when it really kicked in that I was like, oh yeah, like I'm going in a few months. And to be honest, I think that helped my football a little bit because I was still playing for Para at that time. And that year we were actually playing some really good football and playing really well. So it sort of just allowed me to be free and just play football for the sake of playing football rather than thinking about anything else. And I was having a really good time playing. I was playing 18s, 20s at the time for Para, training with first grade every now and again as well, which was nice and really helped me on the physical side sort of get ready for college. And then, obviously being a young fella, being 18 at the time, never obviously lived away from home or lived away from mum and dad. The sooner it got to going over, the more excited, but the more scared and daunting it was at bowl. It's, I think everybody knows that moving away from home is obviously very tough, and especially on the other side of the world where I didn't know anybody at all. Obviously I knew Camo, or I didn't know Camo, but obviously you got us in touch and we'd spoken a little bit. He was a captain, obviously another Aussie at the time at the school, so that made it a little bit easier just thinking about going there. But one person in a whole new place, it is very daunting. But it's credit to you and especially my mum and dad. Just a bit like to be all right. Sort of not saying oh, if you don't want to go, we can always back out. It was always like, no, you're going, it'll be all right. And the rewards really paid off. But heading over in August, we went to LA for a 2-week holiday because mum's got some cousins over there, so we went and visited them and spent some time there. And then mum and dad and my brother, we all flew over to Delaware, off to Philly, and from LA, and then practically moved in the next day, practically said bye to mum and dad. They stayed for one more day, watched our first couple of training sessions on the first day, and then everything was fine because obviously I knew mum and dad were just 10 minutes down the road in the hotel. And then it was day 3 of preseason. The intensity was off the charts. Obviously, that year we did end up obviously winning the conference, so it was fantastic when I played in the national tournament. So, but the first week of training, like you could just see the intensity was at a different level. The tactical side of things was at a different level, preparation. And so I was just going with the flow. I wasn't trying to overthink everything. I was just a new boy coming in, wanting to stake my place. Just training as hard as I could. And I think day 3 was probably the toughest because that's when mum and dad left the night before. So I didn't really sleep much the night before. And then we had a session at 6 o'clock in the morning, running off 2 hours sleep, 4 sessions already in the bank. Legs are killing. And it's like, you have a choice there whether mentally you want to be strong and realize, this is what you're here for, or you want to feel sorry for yourself and sort of, allow yourself to, feel those emotions, but also let it get in the way of what you're there to do. So, obviously mum and dad were on a flight at that time. So it's not like I could call them and say, hey, what do I do? It was sort of just like everything that they'd have already sort of built me up to be from my previous 18 years and just be resilient and sort of just kick on. And, you know, you're here for a reason, you're here for a purpose. So just put your head down and work hard. And fortunately, that's what I stuck to, and that's what I did. You know, and had some fantastic memories in my 4 years of playing, some fantastic moments, some really good individual moments for myself, some fantastic team moments, obviously winning the conference my first year, which is just, you know, doesn't really get too much better than that, to be honest. Going to play 2 rounds of national tournament, playing in a national tournament against one of the boys I played at Marconi with in Aaron as well, which was just, you know, it was crazy. And it was funny enough, he ended up marking me. I played on the right wing that game, and it was a left back at the time, so we were sort of, you know, playing around with each other a bit. So that was awesome. And it's just funny, you know, playing from Marconi together, and then 3 years later we're both in America and in the national tournament playing against each other. Fortunately for me, we won, which is
It was a big game.
Yeah. So, yeah, the first year, the transition, obviously, you know, is tough as well. Like, you know, it's not all as great as it looks all the time. Obviously, you're far away. You have moments where you're just like, oh, I'm like really doing the right thing, and especially when it starts to get colder, and you know, you're like, oh, it's freezing, and then you have to juggle school with it as well. Like, as I said earlier, I wish I knew a year before even joining with you, like what the American system was like, just because I was always a good student. I was always smart, but, you know, towards my back end, I was always football firsts. And I'm pretty sure 80%, 90% of us are the same, whereas football first, yes, you want to do well in school, but you're always thinking, I've got training tonight with my team. We've got training all week. We've got a match this weekend. Like, you're just getting through school with your mates, you know, getting the good marks that you need to get, but nothing that should set you apart. And that's sort of what happened to me in my first ever exam. I was a math class, and, you know, back home you get over 50%, you're happy, you know, you've passed and you're all good. I ended up getting a 55 in my first ever exam over there, and I was like, okay, that's not too bad. And the professor looks at me and he goes, what do you mean? And I said, I passed. And he goes, no, 70%'s a pass. You failed. Wow. I was like, oh, okay. That was a good, that was early on too. That was maybe the second or third week I'd been there. So it was a good little kick in the face. Like, football, everything was going well, but I didn't have a clue about how the real marks and all that sort of worked. And the schooling system was pretty different too as well. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's good to know. I'd rather happen at the start than happen at the end. and since that day, I've always taken my studies much more serious, and obviously still now I graduated in May with my master's, and currently sitting at a 4.0. So hoping to, you know, keep on stay with that with my master's for my last 3 classes. So that was one of the best stories I can tell about grade wise, is like, sometimes it's not about what you know until you actually face it in that moment when you're over there, and you're like, okay, this is the wake up call I needed to sort of pull my finger out a little bit in the classroom. And, you know, now being a coach as well, being a student athlete is always about being a good student as well as being a good athlete. You know, if you can't, like, the way I look at it now is with our players, if I can't trust you to go to class every day and maintain a good enough level to, you know, show good representation of not just only yourself, but your family and also the football team that you represent, how can I trust you to go out and play 90 minutes in, you know, in a quarterfinal or a semi-final or a final, and trust that you're going to stay disciplined to you know, what we're going to do tactic wise. And, you know, if you're in a yellow card, do I trust you? You know, it's little things like that you don't think of when you're 18, that, you know, when you're 25, you're like, all different things just add up, and it becomes part of someone's, you know, the way someone is at the end of the day. Like, if you can't take school serious, how can you take anything else serious? Yeah. So that's your priority. School should always be a priority if you're in there, because at the end of the day, yes, everyone you know, we all got good scholarships, but you're still paying money, a little bit of money for these classes and for the experience of it. So why waste that money?
Yeah. So, yeah. That's a really good recap of that first year. I think the big thing for me is that transition, right?
Yeah.
And I see it across the board. I see a lot of you guys and girls are still, I guess, quote unquote kids.
Yeah.
And then you transition into, you know, adulthood or young adulthood. And I think the big thing for me is that maturity level and the structure and the discipline that is inherent in the system. You entrench yourself into it, get your hands dirty with it. You come out the tail end a lot more structured, right? So, you know, you probably wouldn't have thought, you know, all these years ago now, 8 years or so ago, that, hey, I'm actually now living in America and I'm a coach over there. and I'm finishing off, my MBA.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which is, kudos to you. That's amazing news. But it's the trajectory that I see with all of our clients today, that you go in with a very much a football mindset.
Yeah.
But then you heavily lean into the academic side of things, and that really takes a lot of precedence.
Yeah.
But it really gives a context around, having structure in your life, just basically.
Yeah.
Right? So I guess the football part is the fun part, right?
Oh yeah, the football part's the easy part.
Yeah. Yeah. And the academics is where you really get that structure. A lot of people say to me, I don't even talk to, close family friends, and they'll say, oh, my kid, I don't mind, schooling is not the most important thing. And it's a bit sad, right? Because we're living in a culture now, and you see all these influencers and people online go, oh, you don't have to go to school. That could be true, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be quote unquote successful.
Yeah.
But what I know for a fact, like, obviously I finished my degree, you finished your degree, anyone who I know have gone through that process, it gives you some kind of structure. Like the degree is there as a piece of paper, but it I guess it gives you that platform.
Yes.
Of having the structure around your day, your routine, how you attack the day, how you plan ahead. These things that are very, really worthwhile traits to build up, right? And I guess that's premise behind being a student athlete in the US system, and you're not going to get it here in Australia. It's just right. Your football's over here, and your academics are over here.
Exactly.
Maybe you want to talk about, post that second year, it's kind of trial by fire, get in there. I think your attitude was phenomenal all the way throughout, right? And the fact that you go, okay, hey, look, I've got to earn my keep.
Yeah.
I see a lot of the younger generation coming through in my processes now. It's almost like, well, I just want to go there because I want to start there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Hold on. I'm going into an ultra competitive environment. How do I survive in that pressure cooker? Because that's where the magic happens, right? You get other competitive environments to survive. You come out the tail end a lot more adept at many different things in life, right?
Yeah.
Whether you go on to play football at a high level or not.
Yeah.
Talk to us about, like, year two onward, how you transition into more leadership roles in the team.
Yeah.
And how that kind of all capped off in your final year of being with Goldie, and what you guys accomplished over those years as well.
Yeah. So Dixon, the head coach, Ryan Dixon, he's been absolutely just fantastic, sensational obviously for the program, but for me, ever since I went over there, and now obviously working with him, it's just like, I've got nothing but good things and positive things to say about him, and he's really helped me get to where I am today. He's been, like a father figure on the other side of the world when I was a player, and now, we work together, and it's just like leaning off each other and bouncing off each other. It's awesome. So like my second year, to be honest, the second year was the toughest year. And obviously everybody has different experiences, but when you come into a program and, the first thing you do is you win the conference your first year, you go to the national tournament. After that, the mindset is, this is what I need to do every year. Like, this is, not that it's not once did I ever think this is easy, but it was the mindset of a lot of the boys was like, this is the standard that we need to maintain. We lost 13, 14 seniors my freshman year, so the year after we won. And you don't realise how important, even the boys who don't play, how important they are just in the culture and in the system, and, the tactical side of things, and just getting through training sessions and that. And that spring, my freshman year spring, we were pretty good. We were still playing the football that we played in the fall. But obviously you could feel, we were a lot younger. And then, everything was okay. I got moved into more of a younger leadership role as a freshman, and then coming in my sophomore year, the second year, we had a lot of new boys come in. And when you have a lot of new boys come in, doesn't matter how good the quality is, it's always going to take a little bit of time. And it was a lot of different cultures coming in at that time. We were heavily South American and European. My first year. Second year, it was more European than South American, which was fine. I mean, both are just fantastic, different cultures. It were great, but for the boys that were still there and the new boys coming in, not everybody saw eye to eye. And it wasn't the freshmen, it was more the boys who'd already been there 2 or 3 years, and the new boys coming in. They were coming into a system or a team that had just won it, so they're trying to show their best and be very competitive. And then some of the boys who had been there 2 or 3 years are like, who are these new boys coming in trying to do this? Right. And my thought was, I love the new boys who were coming in. I thought they were bringing everything we needed. And it was, you could see from day one, it was going to take a little bit of time just because the team dynamic was so different to what it was 12 months earlier. But for myself, I always just strive myself on working hard. I might not be the best player, but growing up, I still am a huge Steven Gerrard fan. Massive, like he's my idol growing up, and he always will be. I always used to read his book, and he always used to say, there was something along the lines of, I might not be the best player every day, but I know I can work the hardest every day. And if I can walk off the field knowing I've worked as hardest out of anybody on that field, then I'm going to be happy with myself, and performance and everything will always come along with that. So I've always, I think it was 8 or 9, I read his book, and since that day, I've always tried to take that attitude into everything that I do in life, not just football, but work. Now coaching as well, like if I can prepare and do everything to the best of my ability, even if it doesn't come off, I know I've given absolutely everything, and that's how I strive to be, with everything I do. So that was my mindset going into the second year, because I had no idea how it was going to be. Obviously you want to be that winning team again, but you also know that football and life don't work like that. So I just put my head down, worked as hard as I could, try to be the best leader I could for all my boys, like the freshies who are now second years. We all had a really good relationship. We all lived together. So I just tried to be that leading force of those boys to try and stay on the right path. And fortunately, that side of it worked well. Football side, it didn't work out that well. We played great football. We just couldn't win games. And that was a new team who weren't as cohesive as what it should have been. So that was very tough mentally. Being away from home, second year, complete other end of things, and then when football's not going well, it's very easy to try and take an eye off academics. And everything else that's going on, you sort of try and lead astray, and you're trying to work out football more and more, and you sort of almost forget about academics. I just made sure that I keep pinching myself to make sure that I was always trying to stay on track and not ever get that 55% that I got my first ever exam. So that was tough, but we all got through it, and we all came together in the spring of that second year and listen, we don't ever want to have a season how we had again. And that comes on us. It's not the coaching staff. It's just us needing to come together more as a team. A few more seniors left, and that's when I got promoted to the team captain in the spring of my second year. We had some really good workout programs and sessions that we did with our strength and conditioning coach in the spring. He worked us really, really hard. We had a good spring. We did not lose a game. We went to UD, who were a D1 side. We went and beat them 3-1 on their own paddock. So, we really turned it around in terms of culture. And the biggest thing for me, especially in the spring, is if you can get your culture right, you're always going to have a good year following on after that. So then we had that same core that we had in my second year in the spring, all starting in the third year, my junior year. And we were a fantastic team. We underachieved, to be completely honest, towards the back end of the season. But for a while there, it was my best year as well as a player at college. My third year, I transitioned, and towards the back end of the spring, I've always had a good IQ for the game. So I sort of said to Dixon, hey, can I try, give me a go at right back? And I'd come in as a right winger, as a 9, but I sort of the game slowed down for me by that time as I was playing. And I thought I could contribute and offer a lot more with what we had in the team on the right, as a right fullback, being very aggressive and being more as a wing back. And that year I had a really good year. Scored 2 goals, got 7 assists, made a couple of the All-East Region teams or conference teams. So that for individual wise was really, really good for myself. The team, we played some great football. We went on a run of 8 wins in a row or whatever it may be. I think it was in terms of winning football matches in a row, I think it was almost a record for the school. The unbeaten run we had a few years before that when we won it was longer, but we had drawn a few games there, whereas my junior year, we just were winning. We just could not stop winning. And then towards the back end of the season, we got a few injuries. I was out towards the back end of the season as well, with what I was initially told was a torn ACL. And then a week later, they were like, oh, no, it's not torn. It's just all damage, whatever. And it's up to you if you want to keep playing. So I was like, yeah, of course, if I can play, I'm going to play. We're at the back end of the season. I've had a great year. I'll be fine, And then one of our other boys, Jamie, who was, massive for us, Scottish number 6, he played the whole season on a torn meniscus.
Wow.
So it was just sort of testament to the culture that we sort of built at the time, that it was team over anything, and we all just wanted to win, and we wanted to work for each other, and we were putting the team above all our individual needs and all that type of thing. And we unfortunately lost in the quarterfinals on penalties. It was an absolutely hectic game. We drew 4-4. We were up 2-0 at one point. We were up 3-1, got to 3-3. With 5 minutes to go, we scored to make it 4-3. So we're all, everyone's buzzing, like, yeah, we just got to see this out. Off kickoff, backline and goalkeeper have a misunderstanding. They just come through and make it 4-4, and then we get to penalties. And probably the lowest point of my college career, the penalties. The day before, I'd spent all after training. I went 30 for 30. Put him in the exact spot I wanted. Just knew if it got to penalties, I'd be fine. I step up. I'm number 5 and captain. Like, if I score, we win. Got saved, and I've never felt so low in my life. The shootout ended up going to, I think, 11 or 12 rounds. So I take a little bit of comfort that I wasn't the only one to miss, but being the guy that I am, and wearing my heart on my sleeve, like I even still some now, like days like now, like it's sort of sometimes I just think of that moment, and it's like it's one of those things, it's football and it's going to happen, and it's unfortunate, but it's the way it goes. And, it's just about how you, I guess, bounce back and all that from that. So, it's at the end of the day, my 4 years there have been, absolutely brilliant as a player. Obviously, got interrupted with COVID, which sort of hurt me a little bit in terms of just momentum and rhythm. Like, I'd really sort of found my style and my form, and really thought that my senior year, I was going to kick on and hopefully keep going from that. At that point, that was my mindset, just because I was playing really good football. Coaches, were liking how I was playing, and then COVID hit, took a year out, and obviously there was no football really being played back here. By the time I got back, it was middle of March, so every team had already got all their teams sorted and everything. So I was just training by myself the whole time I was home, which was good for myself, but obviously I needed to be in a team environment. It was just tough because COVID shut a lot of things down, and it was like that for the rest of the world as well, not just me, obviously. But then I went back over there in 21. Got a gig playing summer league out in Scranton for Electric City Shock, which was fantastic in a sense. They paid for housing, food, all that sort of stuff. It was mad. They put us up in a house with all the boys. They gave us a car to sort of travel around in. There's not all too much in Scranton, to be completely honest. It's very, you look left and right and you're sort of looking at the same thing. But it was really good for football, like just for experience. Again, we had a pretty good campaign. It sort of tailed off towards the back end because a lot of our D1 boys had to leave to go back for their pre-season, and we're very short-handed the last couple of games. But in terms of experience and football experience, to go and play somewhere else in the States and meet a whole bunch of new different boys as well was brilliant. Came back for our my last year of college, and again, we had 23 new players that year, just because of the turnover in terms of how many of us were supposed to graduate. For me and a few of the other boys ended up dropping a class just so we could come back and play our senior year. Wow. Because we didn't want to graduate online, and we didn't want to graduate and not get our senior year of college football, college soccer. So a few of us decided to do that. Obviously, everybody has different paths in life. And then, I lived with a few of my best mates that have been my best mates since day one. We ended up living together from that. We didn't live on campus. We just rented a house, with the goal being, obviously, we've only got one more class and one more semester, then we're going to be able to start working. So we all got our OPTs, started working, branched off, and spent some time together. Obviously, living together for 2 years was fantastic. And it was good for me. I always knew I wanted to stay in football, but after the grueling and such a big 4 years, I wanted to take a year away from it, just because, it had been so good and so much, but I was already over there. I wanted to sort of experience something a little bit different away from football, just to see, how life would be away from football. And, obviously you touched on, I'm a massive Liverpool fan. I did a few trips as well, because Europe obviously is much closer than what it is here. Yeah. It's been good. I've been able to go over to Liverpool a few times, see some family over there, go and watch some fantastic football matches. Got to watch Liverpool against Barcelona, where we beat them 4-0. And the Champions League, went over recently again with Dad and my uncle to watch Klopp's final game. So I've been very lucky with, fortunate with all the experiences that I've had. But yeah, just giving myself a year away from football that's immediate to me, to sort of, see where I want to be in life in terms of, am I happy to be away from football, or do I need to stay in football? And that 18 months I was working at a law firm, doing really, really well, had a great job. She was going to sponsor me, keep me in the country. But then I started playing football again in the summer, just for the local Delaware NPSL team. And then I'd run into Dixon a couple of times watching some football. Maybe we just ended up being at the same matches, and we sort of started talking. And so, listen, if you ever want to coach, let me know and we'll make it happen. You can come and join Goldey, and just, because you're familiar and everything like that. And the year beforehand, the year after I left, and the year before I joined, they went 0-16, and it was just a matter of things unfortunately for them just didn't work out the way they wanted. And every program has that moment where they sort of have to reevaluate everything that they're doing. And fortunately for us, that was that moment. And then it was, as soon as he said that to me, I just couldn't get that out of my head. I want to go back and I want to help and I want to be a part of it again. And I had a few words with my boss at the time of the law firm, and I was very happy to sort of make it work in terms for her and for me. And obviously said, look, I give my priority to work, and if I can make football, I will, because I was making good money at the time. But she became very, not very happy with that decision. So I was like, no problem, I'll remove myself from it. Fortunately, a grad assistant position opened up in the registrar's office as well at Goldey. So I sort of just went straight into that role, started coaching. And then because I'm doing my master's, I can get my CPT. So I was working, currently I still am, I'm working, managing operations at a tennis facility in Delaware. I'm working in the registrar's office part-time, and I'm coaching at Goldey as well, and now coaching for one of the local sporting Delaware teams. I've got an under-16s team there as well, an EDP side. So it's very full on. But I'm doing everything that I wanted to do, and that 18-month break that I took from when I graduated my bachelor's to before I went back to being a coach was the springboard for making sure that I stay in football, because it was good. I was making good money, and I was learning some, amazing things being in a law firm, obviously getting to go to court, getting to just work on cases all the time. But my life has always been football, and that's how I want it to be. But again, going back to the student side of things, I wouldn't have got that opportunity at a law firm if I didn't pull my finger out, so it's just one of those things where I understand that school isn't for everybody. I know some of my closest friends finished school when they were 15, and they're doing absolutely great right now. They're doing really, really well. So it's not the fact that school is for everybody, but if you're in that position to be there, make the most of it. Don't just let it go by, type of thing. Don't just let it be like, I'm going to focus primarily on football. School's just there, and then when I'm done with football, then at least I have a piece of paper. But it's good to have that piece of paper, but you also got to know what you're doing with that piece of paper. You got to know how to use that piece of paper, and anybody can have a piece of paper, but if you're not going to maximize it, then it's just a piece of paper, so that was absolutely fantastic for me. That wake up call, again, I'm a big believer that things happen for a reason, and that 55% is a story I'll always tell everybody, just because, it's one of those things, like anybody at home knows, anything over 50, you're all right. Like, okay, it's not the best thing ever, but at least you passed. Whereas, over there, it was a good wake up call to be like, hey, you need to do better. And since that moment, I've always strived to do better, and taken that, I want to take 100%, not just on the football pitch, but absolutely everything that I do. So it's been a crazy journey. It's been absolutely wild. It's been amazing. Thankfully, it's all in my hands, whether I wanted to end it or if I want to keep going. So it's a great position to be in. And I love the coaching side. I think I enjoy it a little bit more than actually playing. Now that I look at it, I love it. Like, obviously we're all part-time at Goldey, but all four in the coaching staff take it like we're full-time. Like, we've got our group chat that we're texting in every single day. Throughout the summer, we're meeting every other day, planning pre-season, making sure we've got everything ready for the boys. We're really trying to hold and have a real high professional standard at Goldey now. The last 2 or 3 years, we've really changed our approach into how we look at things. And, we believe if we can give the boys absolutely everything possible, then they'll be able to take it on. But if we're only giving them certain amounts of things, we can't expect them to take that and kick on, type of thing, and we're striving ourselves on being a program. Yes, we ultimately want to win games, want to win conferences, but we want players to come in and develop and become the best version of themselves on the field and off the field. And you know, it's telling that the last 4 or 5 years we've sent 6 guys D1. You know, so that's also part of the process. And one of the boys I brought in last year literally just signed for Mercyhurst last week. You know, he was with us for 6 months. Obviously, very unfortunate for us. Fantastic player. I brought him in for the fall of this year, and you know, he's one of those players that you knew was going to be D1 bound. It was just about getting him in the college environment, getting him to experience and give him a little bit of, you know, help on things that, you know, I've experienced in my time. That's the best part of it, is now I can relay my experiences and sort of help. I can see which way guys are going after 2 days of training. Like, I can see whether they're really into it or whether they aren't 100% sure really what they want to do. And seeing that and being through experiences like that, I can just always be that sort of coach to just lend a hand there about, listen, like, these are the options, these are the opportunities. It's really up to you. And then when it comes to football, as I said, all 4 of us take it so serious. Like, we're always watching the opponents, we're always watching ourselves. We do so much analysis now. We do so many scouting reports, a lot of film sessions, and it's just like the professionalism that we're trying to set isn't just for football, it's for life. Like, if, you know, we make sure boys come in at a certain time to meet before training so we can do this, and it's just about being punctual, you know. And the level of professionalism in our squad has gone up so much in the last 18 months, just from us trying to do new things. The boys have really kicked on board into it. And like, you know, from boys coming, you know, late, we're in the wrong gear 18 months ago, that doesn't really happen anymore. And now we have a real good leadership group of boys who make sure that, hey, if you're not wearing the right thing, you're not training, and you set yourself back. And, you know, it's all about fighting for a spot every day. And that's not just in the 90 minutes of training or the 90 minutes of the football match. That's in the classroom. If you're not showing up to class, why are you not showing up to class? You know, what's stopping you? You're a student athlete. You live on campus. Class is a 2-minute walk away at 9 o'clock. We didn't have training till 4 o'clock. So there is really no excuse, you know, and it's just about trying to set those standards. And that's ultimately what I believe builds a winning team, is having the right standards and having everybody work the right way. And again, it's not built in one day, you know, it takes time, and it's about believing and trusting in that process that you are trying to build as well. Because even in the middle of that, when things are going well, you are going to have a dip. It's inevitable, you know. It's, you know, players get injured, players get sick, you know, but it's a real good lesson for players who maybe are on the outskirts, who are maybe number 23, number 24, that you are going to get your chance. Particularly in college, we play 4 games in 8 days throughout a season, you know, and it's inhumane to get the same players playing 90 minutes, 4 games in 8 days. So everybody's valuable in one way or another. And if you're not working to your ability, you're not just letting yourself down, but you're letting the team down, because the team's only as good as their worst player, quote unquote, right? Like, and it's been fantastic. Like, the growing, you know, you don't know all that much about yourself as a coach until obviously you actually get in those situations. You start leading a couple of sessions and you do some drills. You might think it might go well, but then you watch the film back from training, you're like, I should have done this better, I could have done this better. But that's how you grow, you know. And no one's expecting a 25-year-old to know everything, but it's also about how you present yourself. You know, if you show that you're passionate, guys jump on board. And I mean, you know me, I'm wearing my heart on my sleeve. So
yeah,
everyone says how I feel.
I think, mate, there's so many golden pieces of advice, and just, you can compartmentalize your journey over 8 years. There's so many good kind of tidbits there. I think 2 things that really stood out for me was, in particular, all the coaching staff are part-time. And, you know, I see it here at a local level. I actually saw her on some kind of chat. The coach locally mentioned something on LinkedIn saying, you know, when, and it's a fair question, when is Australian football going to get to a point where, even in the Premier Leagues, like, you see, you know, they expect you to be there pretty much, you know, 4 or 5 days a week as a coach.
Yeah.
Not you at all.
Yeah.
I understand that dynamic, but to be a part-time coach and like, you're working on the side, you're balancing an MBA, plus you're managing a team, you know, that's a story unto itself, because it kind of shows that, hey, it's interesting, because I've had a few younger coaches or younger players who are aspiring to be coaches, and they say, well, I want to go into that role over here, or I want to go into that role over there at XYZ club, or I want to go coach in the A-League, how much do I get paid? And I think, something that I learned a few years back now, but pardon me, I was with MacArthur SC for 2 years alongside Mile Stoyovsky very closely, and I got paid very, very, very little. Obviously, I run a full-time business, and that's great. But, there was some hours put into it. And then, when these kids would come back to me and say, I want to get paid for X, Y, Z, I ask them the question. I say, well, would you do something for nothing, but just so that you could learn, right? And I think that's so admirable of you, obviously, Ryan, forever now. What he's done with Goldey in that kind of competitive environment. The CACC is obviously a no-joke conference.
Yeah.
Getting stronger and tougher every year. Be a part-time coach and have a part-time staff, but still have the success that you guys have had over the years is testament, right?
Yeah.
To putting your head down when you're not really getting paid very much at all. That's all passion. That's just, that's pure professionalism. Right? The hats off to you in regards to that. But there's two things that I want to kind of cap off the conversation. One is leading into kind of the growth of the game over there, and we'll talk about that. But also the transition across the collegiate environment in terms of internationals coming in, right? So have you seen, like we'll talk about the CACC, have you seen the level and standard of play coming into the system internationally get better and better each?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think the 8 years that I've been there and played and joined and coached and all that sort of thing now, the international play coming over is only higher and higher. And even at teams who maybe aren't having the best years, they have 3 or 4 players who are just mustard. Like you look at them, they're like, yeah. There's a few players we look at like, okay, like you play against them in conference, they haven't had a great year as a team, but you look at this player, if you put him in the right environment, he's going to be, sensational. And the biggest thing for a player is environment, to be honest. All about that. A lot of players know all about that. But yeah, I think the international level of player has risen so much to a point where I'd say there's almost more internationals playing college soccer now across the board than maybe there are, or at least on rosters. I think it's a very even split. We still have a few conferences, the PSAC, which is closer to us. That's much more of an American style. Like we come up against teams who are just strictly straight American, and which is nothing wrong with that, but their style of play is a lot more physical. And that's where you see the internationals sort of struggle a little bit initially, is playing against the big 6'4", 220 pound, bloody 85 kilo big shithouse, right, at centre half. And, they might not have an ounce of footballing ability that the young Brazilian boy's got at his foot. Give him a 50-50 and that Brazilian boy's out for 2 weeks, and that's how a lot of teams like Bloomsburg, I'm sure you know all about Bloomsburg, like they are strictly just American. They've gone to the national tournament now 2 years in a row. They've won their conference. Like they are built on. We played them this year. We lost 1-0. We got very unlucky. We probably should have won 2 or 3-1. We didn't capitalize on chances. They had one throw in all game, one long throw in, put all their big boys in the box, flick onto the back post, tap in header. And a lot of our boys are like, this isn't how you play football. And look, to a certain extent, a lot of us agree. Like the way we play Goldey, we're very aggressive. We want to keep the ball, But at the end of the day, there is no right style of play. If you're winning football matches, it does not matter how you play. And I think Bloomsburg was something about 17-4-1 or something like that this season. Like they were like that last season too, and they are just so well coached. All their players have bought in, and they just play the style that suits all the players that they have. And they win football matches. They win games 1-0 almost every. Nothing crazy, nothing special, but they win football matches. And ultimately, as a coach, that's what you're there to do, right? You're there to win games. But in saying that, like you see, there's such a high level of international player now, but it does take a lot of them. I'd say 2 semesters. Dixon always says this: you only know how good your freshmen are because in the fall you're feeding off adrenaline. In the spring, when it's the second time round, what type of personality actually are you? And for a lot of the international freshmen, you might have a good first semester, but then how do you back it up? Backing it up is always, the hardest bit. So, yes, the quality has definitely risen over the years for sure, and there probably is more internationals here now, but at the same time, it is not as easy as what players think it is. You do have to apply yourself, and you have to look after yourself.
Yeah, and then the other part that you tapped, the game on the professional side, obviously college is kind of wedged in between it all.
Yep.
You see the massive growth of the USL as a Obviously, there's the summer leagues and the NPSL, USL2, and otherwise. A lot of players, you yourself, leverage that. It's a good opportunity for you, for a kind of more of a league level college soccer player to continue to play at high level against a really good standard college soccer player national. What do you see in terms of the growth of the game and opportunities for internationals to leverage the college market as a platform for them to be able to kind of grow into this rapidly expanding and rapidly evolving pro and semi-pro market in the US?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely, again, it's one of those things where it's definitely there now more than probably it ever has been. One of the biggest takeaways I have from college soccer is everything is stats based. Everything, like, you know, and that's maybe a little bit of a downfall in a way as well, but it's also understandable in the sense that there is so many matches being played every week that obviously how it's very difficult to watch full 90s of players. If you have good numbers, it automatically jumps your success rate to get to that next level compared to if you don't. Like I've played a few fantastic players and maybe they don't have the numbers that they should, so they struggle to maybe make that next leap because they're a fantastic football. But if you can't get the numbers in the 4 years of college, you don't have the best chance to go to that next level, because that next level again is another 20% quicker, 20% more physical. You know, so you have to be at the peak of your game in college to make it to that next level 9 times out. But I think now with all the new pathways that have been created, the NPSL is a really good head start. It's a mixture of emotions as a coach though, because I mean I've played in it and then gone to play as a player, and sometimes it can kill your legs, to be honest, playing in the summer, because you're doing all this in-season football training matches to then go to a 2-week preseason where you're doing 2-a-days, and your body is already past preseason in the sense that you're already fit enough for that, but you still have to do the preseason of a team preseason. So if you're overworking your body in that sense, you get niggles all year. And the first year I did that, the year I came back my senior year, I was having hamstring and quad problems, hip flexors, all throughout the season. Like you manage to play through it, but it's just that type of fatigue on your body that you don't anticipate, because you're playing in the heat for 3 months, you're running around and you're so fit to then go into a 2-week preseason at 5 a.m. to do bloody up and downs for an hour and a half, and it's just like your hamstring almost falls off the bone. You know, that's a choice as a player that you want to make, and there is no easy way around preparing yourself for the best way possible to start a college year. But as a junior and a senior, you can work to manage it a little bit better. And particularly as a senior, if you've played 2 years at NPSL level, you have good numbers in the college level, it really sets you up to then go and get yourself an agent or keep reaching out to clubs in your own, go to tryouts, go to these different clubs, these USL clubs who have open tryouts, and just put your name out there, you know, and it probably it gets more inclusive and easier to sort of see these opportunities. And I mean, you know, the way you know it as well as I do, when you look at D1, D2, D3, the level of quality isn't all that much. It's more so the facilities and the sizes of the school that dictate where you sort of, but the style and the level of play isn't all that too dissimilar. So, you know, some players come in and say, I want to be a D1 player, I want to be a D1 player. That's fine. But if you're going to go to a D1 school just to say you're going to D1, but they don't play the style of football that's going to suit, it's a much more physical game than that suits you. Why put yourself in a position like that when you were thriving at the top of your game as a, you know, that's how you're going to get noticed to go to the next level, is by getting consecutive minutes and playing 90 minutes week in week. Not many clubs are going to look at a player who's played 45 minutes sparingly for a D1 program and think, he's played D1, he's good. But if you look at someone who's played about 4,500 minutes to about 5,000 minutes across their college career at D, right, at a good D2 program, you've won things, you've been a good side, you've got good numbers. Automatically, you stand out more, because you just look at that player, he's a seasoned player, he's a professional. A player who's played 279 minutes in his senior year at a D1 just because he wanted to go D, it's not always as good as it sounds.
Yeah.
If you just want to, I want to play D1 because you want to play D1 and you're happy with 279 minutes, no problem. But there's nothing wrong with being a D2 player and playing 5,000 minutes in 4 years, winning tournaments, you know, making some great memories, but also pushing yourself to get to that next level. So yeah, back to your question, I definitely do think there is much more of an opportunity for internationals to keep playing at the highest level. And, there's only new teams forming every year in the NPSL and in the USL. Cities and all these different regions are really jumping into it. And now with the World Cup coming in 2026 next year, football has grown so much since 2017. Since I can't speak before 2017 because I was, but from 2017 till now, the professionalism, the approach, like the club that I work for, Sporting Delaware, like just the way that they look at things and like how professional they're trying to make things is a really good sign for the American system, and is a good sign for internationals coming over, because the opportunities are going to be there, particularly between now and 2028. Once the World Cup fever has died down, everything is readily available, and clubs want to make sure that, when these international outfits come out in the next 12 to 18 months, and they're going to have all these coaches come and have a look at the systems, they want to make sure it's as top tier as possible, right? Because they don't want to make sure they don't want to make it embarrassing for for these international clubs coming to train at a facility, for example, maybe watching a training session and being like, what the hell? So I think in that sense, them winning the World Cup bid has only been good. And don't get me wrong, there's still room to grow, obviously, and Europe's always going to be the pinnacle but the American system, even the MLS, for example, is growing. It's growing, and they're now a part of the CONCACAF Champions League, and like we go and watch Philly Union every now and then. Like the style in football, like some games, is just absolutely unbelievable, and the players that come across there is, you get players going from the MLS to the Premier League more and more. I mean, look at John Duran from Villa's number 9. He played a year at Chicago. Now he's, one of the most sought after strikers in the world. I mean, clubs are prepared to pay $70 million for him, and he played 18 months out in the MLS. So it's, the pathways are definitely here.
Yeah.
The pathways are definitely there. So I can't speak highly enough of the growth of the game in the last 8 years, to be honest.
Mate, you're front and center in the system, mate. What you gave us now, I've been at it for about absolute gold. Like, student athlete, prospective student athlete and their family. When I send this out, they're just going to get so many nuggets of wisdom. I'm proud of you. Hats off. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of amazing things ahead for you, coaching and otherwise. Your passion toward the game it's palpable. I mean, some of the things that you're talking about give me chills, mate, when you talk. I've been coaching for 20 years, but I don't think I even had that amount of passion that you had, mate. But, hats off to you, man. I think it's phenomenal, and I think everyone's going to get so much great information from you, mate. I really appreciate your time today, man.
No, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity all those years back, coming in and sort of helping me through the process, and always obviously still being there throughout 8 years later, so now we work towards trying to get plays together. So we've gone from me coming across with you and asking you for some players. So, hopefully the next couple of years, scholarship and that can come, we'll be able to get some good Aussies in, because Dixon always says that he loves having a good Aussie in the team. And I think it's just the way we are as people, just how we are, sort of every coach sort of loves. But yeah, so no, it's been awesome again. Thank you so much for for this and for everything.